episode of Star Wars Rebels, The Mandalorians Return, as Ezra Bridger, Sabine Wren, and former Mandalorian protector Fen Rao return to the Concord system, where they're immediately intercepted by the Empire's brand new weapon, the Imperial Supercommandos. That's right, Imperial Supercommandos. You know exactly what this means. Brand new cool cosplay and lots of awesome action figures to sell. Any episode that involves the Mandalorians is bound to be really exciting. It also really helped that this week's episode featured Sabine Wren, who is my favorite character from Star Wars Rebels, and of course Ezra Bridger is tagging along, mostly just there for comic relief. Does he really think he can fool them by calling himself Lando Calrissian? I don't think so. The main story in this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels is that Sabine, Ezra, and their captive Fen Rao, a former Mandalorian, are returning to the third moon of the Concord Dawn system. They're intercepted by the Imperial Supercommandos, which are Mandalorians which now work for the Empire. They have slick, really awesome looking armor, especially their leader Gar Saxon, who's a pretty important character in the Star Wars lore. While I never read the comic book or even the novels which were based around his character, he was actually a part of the Shadow Collective and was responsible for actually saving Darth Maul, which is where he is today. That makes him a pretty freaking important character, but I absolutely love the design of his armor. The red and the white, the perfect combination of stormtroopers, Mandalorians, and just a splash of Boba Fett. It looks really great. And speaking of Boba Fett, Gar Saxon is actually joined by another group of Imperial Supercommandos who have this white armor, which is incredibly distinctive, and it really reminds me of the Ralph McQuarrie concept art for Boba Fett, which was used in the initial creation of that character. It's really great to see them. They're all awesome when they're flying around in their jetpacks. They're just badass super commandos. They definitely live up to their name. And they're also incredibly ruthless, as not only do they destroy all of the Mandalorian protectors, but they will also stop at nothing to get at Rao, who conveniently manages to knock out both Sabine and Ezra, only to arrive to his planet to see everything destroyed. Basically taking out all of his anger against the rebels, knowing that if they hadn't have captured him, he might have been able to prevent their destruction. However, Ezra ends up getting captured by Gar Saxon, and this means that Sabine and Rao are going to have to team up reluctantly. But by the end of the episode, Rao actually ends up becoming a really important character, realizing the error of his ways and seeing how far Sabine will actually go to help out her family. This actually causes him to be a brand new member of the Rebels, which means we have even more former Mandalorians joining the Galactic Rebellion. It's pretty awesome. But the coolest thing about this episode just has to be the Imperial Supercommandos themselves. They are just so cool the way they fight, especially how they fly around almost in like a flying V formation with their jetpacks. I almost thought that Sabine was going to get her very own special jetpack in this episode when she stole one of them, but by the end of it, it ends up getting destroyed. The biggest sequence of this episode, though, is when Ezra, Sabine are trying to escape from the Imperial Supercommandos as they're flying through all of these caverns. It's a really thrilling sequences with a lot of moments which are just frankly kind of ridiculous, like when Sabine is actually just holding on to Ezra while he's using his lightsaber to deflect all of their attacks, jumping from one Mandalorian to the other, and even riding Chopper like a frigging surfboard. There's a lot of goofy moments, but frankly, it's just so action-packed and fun, and I love the designs of the Imperial Supercommandos. That's really what brings this whole episode together for me, is just how incredibly badass they look. It's no question that I'm a huge fan of Boba Fett and the Mandalorians in general. You just can't help but not like their cool looking armor and awesome weaponry, and you get to see a lot of the coolest parts of that in this episode right here, and it's really awesome just seeing that there is a group of Mandalorians working with the Empire. The fact that we've never actually seen them before. It gives me hope that we can even see these guys at some point, maybe even in a Star Wars movie, which I think would be fantastic. Wouldn't that be awesome to see these guys show up in like Rogue One or something? Just imagine the possibilities with these characters. Imagine the financial possibilities by selling all of the action figure variants. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels? This was a great episode right here. Anything Mandalorian related is bound to be really exciting. I love that Sabine was really important, and I love the fact that they're tying together more of her backstory. The fact that apparently her mother is also reluctantly working with the Empire as well. A very mysterious character that apparently Gar Saxon has some sort of connection with, but they don't really get to it that much in this episode. Really, this was a straight introduction to the Imperial Supercommandos, their ruthlessness, their tech, and just how frigging awesome they are. It's also really great that Rao is now going to be a member of the Rebel crew, which I just think is really awesome. I hope he's actually going to be able to keep his helmet and everything. He's such a cool character. Mandalorians in general are all awesome. A lot of that having to do with their armor and their badass warrior culture. Ezra in this episode honestly kind of got on my nerves a little bit because I was kind of hoping his character would mature a little bit more in the 3rd season, but he's still the same old goofy Ezra, especially when he's being interrogated by Gar Saxon, who's constantly threatening to kill Chopper, yet Ezra is still just goofing off like an idiot, calling himself Lando Calrissian, saying that he's actually a part of Hondo Ohnaka's crew, and it all ends up biting him in the ass when he actually ends up revealing that he's a Jedi. He actually stops Chopper from getting shot multiple times by using his Jedi powers. This just makes him even more of a target for the Imperial Supercommandos. Without a doubt, the best thing about this episode, though, is the big escape sequence towards the end when Sabine and Ezra are escaping with Chopper in tow, escaping from the Imperial Supercommandos. Frickin' Rao comes back down in the ship, destroys theirs, and then Sabine and Gar Saxon end up having this amazing one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat. And it's great seeing something like this, because a lot of times it's always blasters and lightsabers. It's not too often that you get a straight-up fisticuffs battle, but this is something that the Mandalorians absolutely excel at, and you get to see a lot of that in action in this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels, which was great. Definitely expanding on the universe, giving the Mandalorian fans something new to chew on, not to mention a little bit more mythos about Sabine and her family, and yet it was still just an exciting episode. I can't wait to see more of these brand new Imperial Supercommandos. So I'm giving this episode right here a 5 out of 5. A super simple episode, but then again, the entire Rebel series is. It's just entertaining as hell and perfectly tailor-made for old school Star Wars fans. So make sure to check it out. I love this episode. You heard my thoughts about it, but I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about this week's episode of Star Wars Rebels and the brand new Imperial Supercommandos? What did you think about the formal introduction of Gar Saxon into the actual film canon, seeing him for the very first time? Do you like the designs of these characters? And what do you hope to see from the rest of the 3rd season of Star Wars Rebels? Please tell me in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe if you liked this review. Make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment or two. I will see you guys next time, and as always, may the Force be with you.